So we've already started chatting anyway, and we're currently discussing the fact that Rich's book is for £2.50 on the GCN website.
It's like that scene in Alan Partridge where he ends up. It was to stop us having to pulp it.
But £2.50 for a book is a bargain.
It's 144 pages of activities.
So
it was good fun doing it. I really enjoyed doing it. But
that's nearly £2. That's nearly 2 pence a page.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's a bit of a bargain. If you put it like that. I mean, some books that I've got on my bookshelf, for example,
it wasn't that much when it came out. It came out in 2016, 2017, something like that. Yeah, it's a few years old, but it's still one of those things that I take a look at and on a bookshelf, and you think, oh, that's quite nice.
It's quite cool, isn't it?
It was made like the paper stock and everything. I was really pleased with it. So that's my dog.
I've just
literally going to do that. Shush. I've got a delivery. Hang on. Keep recording. Just my desk chair. Hooray!
Desk chair. This is so standard, like working from home sort of situation where, desk chair. I currently have a chair that was in Star Wars, Star Trek. That's not even a joke.
Well, I don't know what it is, Chris.
Is it big?
It's not what I thought it was.
It's not your desk chair.
And open it later. I don't know. My dog's small, perfectly formed, and daft. Come here. We can go on a podcast. There you are. There she is. Oh.
What's her name?
She's called Betty.
She looks very, very chilled for a small dog that likes to attack the postman.
Postman. What can you do? Shush. I know. All dogs and postmen. I don't know what it is. Shush. She's gone.
Do you think that incentive of putting something through the door that does it?
I don't know. I think it's a protective thing. I think she likes to just shush. Yeah, shush.
Betty,
settle. She's gone. Post lady's gone now. Yeah.
She's still obsessed.
Seen her off. It's fine.
So
yeah, I think it's a protection thing. I think the dogs are very aware of their space.
Yeah.
And funnily, she's not that bad. She's pretty good. Woof. She doesn't woof a lot. She woofs more than like a big dog. Big dogs I've found don't tend to woof very much.
Yeah,
like chilled in their own enormous, self. But as small dogs go, she's pretty good.
I think all small dogs have a size complexity.
Oh, massively. Yeah, Napoleon. Is it Napoleon syndrome? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. He was a funny man, wasn't he, at the end of the day?
Yeah. Sorry, this is a very random start to a podcast.
But it's kind of perfect. It's how, to be honest, with every single episode I've done, I've tried to make it just a really relaxed conversation. And I think it works.
I think that's fair enough. And I think that's how I like most podcasts that I'm listening to start.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the format, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we did a podcast together. Geez, how many years ago had that been?
It was a couple of years ago, yeah. It was 17. It was an episode of the Cycling Jerseys podcast. I'm still really pleased about it. People still listen to it. People still ask us to bring it back, which I would like to do. Ed and I need to sit down and decide whether it would involve the both of us, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that there's still legs in that podcast. We had to stop because just life got in the way.
Yeah.
We were spending a lot of time on a podcast that wasn't giving us any money. So
yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Like I'm in a similar situation. Like I definitely, you don't really. I think people don't really understand that you don't really get anything from podcasts financially. A lot of the time, people do it because they enjoy it. I mean, about as much as I get from it is that at the start of the podcast I record, an advert's put in, but that might be 2p.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing really. It's nothing really. But the thing that I've changed intentionally is because I was trying to think of how to allow more people to get involved and listen to the podcast, and the most logical thing was to record it as a video.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's no more work really for me, and I can record it as a video, and it can then be added onto YouTube. And a lot of people seem to really like the fact that it's a video as well, so they can actually see people talking. And as I say, it doesn't make a massive difference to me time-wise, really. And I don't know, like this would be episode 31 now.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Yeah, and I took 2 months off as well.
I know.
Yeah,
doing that little bike ride that you did.
we managed to catch up on as well.
I know. I felt. It was a great day.
It was a beautiful day
for me. It's really nice. I had a lovely time, and me and the two lads that I was with, Greg and Paul. I was just really paranoid that you were going to appear, and we'd have been. You know, we stopped to get some food, and I was like, he's going to just appear, you know, or the tracker's wrong, or he's going to whiz past, and I wouldn't be able, and, you know, we wouldn't be able to catch up because it was very windy that day.
It was really windy.
It was Norfolk at its omni headwind. You know, it's omnipresent all the time. This headwind is just, you can go out in any direction most days and end up getting blown to bits. I mean, this is where I am now. So yeah, I am sat in Norwich, which we've lived here for nearly a year and a half, which is quite nice.
Yeah,
I love it. It's a lovely part of the world. We'd moved from Lewes in Sussex, and we'd been in Sussex for like 15 years, and I really love the South Downs. They were my playground, I guess, for quite a long time. And yeah, it's really nice to, I didn't think that such a flat landscape would, I didn't think I'd take to it as much as I have, you know, and I really love it now. It's great. But the riding round is beautiful. Yes, it's not the most hilly of environments. That's true.
You get the hills when you go over the bridges.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. What people define as a hill definitely changes, which is quite funny. Like really funny. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're going to go up that hill, and you're like, well, yeah, it's a flyover. Which is amusing at first, but then you just get into it. But the thing that I've really enjoyed is the fact that we have so many tiny lanes with no cars on. You know, and even before the lockdown, I could go out and I'd be worried about guys sitting in the road, and you'd think, God, I hope they know this road better than I do, because I would never sit that far out, or this, that, and the other. If you're in a big group, you know, I'd be always slightly worried because, you know, you come from the southeast, obviously where you are as well. You know, cars, they don't tend to care, you know, and can appear at a moment's notice. And yeah, we wouldn't see cars for hours, and it was like, you know, it's really nice. It's a very different mindset. It's quite lovely, to be honest.
Yeah. It's very noticeable, isn't it? How, I mean, as you say, you when you lived in the southeast, like I central London, you just kind of accept it that it's shit to cycle in. Like, it's just shit. You just accept it, and I think that's part and parcel of it. But the community in central London is very close knit, which is what I think makes people stay here and still ride around here. You know, it's great having the parks; they're really, really useful. But I never ride in Surrey because I personally think that the like attitude of drivers is so bad.
It's worrying, actually.
It is really worrying, and that's definitely, I think Surrey is like one of the worst places I've ever found with drivers.
It's really strange. It just breeds. Like, I go out on my bike and I can come back and feel really relaxed. And that's when I started going on to the South Downs as well, a lot to ride, because you just not see anybody, or cars weren't obviously there at all. And, you know, you just don't want to get back from the ride feeling pissed off.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get back from a ride feeling, you know, chilled out and big smile on my face. And I was talking with a guy who I ride with quite a bit recently about that, and we both, I said, I've been riding here for over a year, and I've had moments with cars, maybe a handful of times. I mean, and where it would be a handful of times most rides.
Yeah.
Before. And, you know, people sort of doing really weird stuff, like pulling alongside you and shouting abuse. And you're just like, you know, your kids are in the car. Why are you shouting at me? It's like, and you know, I've ridden for a while, and I've ridden in clubs and that, and, you know, I'm not all over the place. You know, I'm right in the side of the road where I should be. Yeah. But yeah, you just seem to see it as I don't know, like a red rag to a bull, just because you're on a bicycle. And I don't know how the conversation can change. I think that's the big thing. I think the conversation, and I don't know, while there are people who are quite happy to be, I don't know, aggressive from both sides, I can't see it changing. And I find that really sad. Like for me, you're like, well, I can't be. I don't want to be aggressive towards you, but then somebody does something really stupid, and you're like, you know,
it gets your blood boiling. Like,
yeah,
I found that it was the start of summer, and I went out for a ride, and I had someone impersonate a police officer and use his car as a weapon. Yeah, this was in Kent, basically, like the sort of London to Kent blurring point. And yeah, he used his car as a weapon, like tried to steer into me twice. He turned ahead. He basically did the old brake testing on me, and did the whole like roundabout, forced me to go left, and then pulled in front of me to force me to stop in a into a bus station. And like all of that combined, like, and he was impersonating the police officer, and I basically refused to stop, because I was like, I do not believe you're a police officer because of the way you're acting. It's not right. And the reason why he tried to pull me over was effectively because he argued that I was too far out in the road, and I was like, I'm avoiding all the dirt and broken glass next to the pavement. That's why I'm further out. I'm trying to keep safe. Because anyway, I basically, after that, it was a pretty horrible experience. I just turned around and rode home. I was like, I don't want to go for a ride anymore. I just went home, and it's
so black and white for people, isn't it? I think that's the thing. It's not a question of that's a person on a bicycle. It's that sense that it's just another cyclist, and it is a bit odd. And as I say, I don't know. I haven't the answer to it, and I've thought about it a lot. I used to think about it all the time. Like, how can we make this better? How can we improve it? Do we need to be less aggressive? Do we need to be more aggressive? Do we need to do? I don't know. It's really odd. And I wonder I think people get it all over the world. I've seen videos of guys in the States, and they get all sorts of grief. And yeah, I don't know what I'd love to be able to solve it as a problem.
Yeah.
For us to be able to ride our bikes and be able to go out and not have to worry anyone. But yeah, there is definitely places in the UK where it does feel a lot safer, 100%. And when I rode the UK, I definitely noticed that as well. I was quite surprised that I probably only really had less than 10 incidents in that challenge, which I thought were a bit dangerous. And maybe of that 10, I would say there were 3 that were very, very stupid, which is, that's 3 too many. That's 10 too many, in fact. Yeah. But, yeah, and at the end of the day, like, anything had happened during the challenge, that's, if I had got hit by a car or something, like, not only would it have been obviously awful because I wouldn't have been able to finish the challenge, but
guarantee they would have got so much press out of it, which not necessarily a good thing, to be honest. But I don't know. That's part of the parcel, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a. I remember that day, and there was a guy decided to drive towards us.
We did have that, yeah, we did.
It was really weird. A guy in a convertible Saab.
Yep, it was a Saab, wasn't it?
So odd. I was like, oh, and I was on the outside of we were two abreast. Everybody was sensible. Everyone knew what they were doing. No. And this guy, I was like, I felt like he was. I thought, sure, he's driving towards me. And he just started to drift. Yeah. And it was like, and then he disappeared and he'd gone, but you knew he was trying to shit us up, basically. I was like,
you and I were riding next to each other at that point. Yeah. I think we both instantly said that was close or something like that.
It's a bit weird. Yeah. And it's like, luckily, nothing happened and he wasn't, trying to do anything. He was just trying to be a bit of a knob, but I just don't see the need. I never really do.
I mean, he was driving a Saab, so I think that says quite a lot, doesn't it, anyway?
Yeah. It was a nice day, though. It was lovely.
Yeah, I mean,
I was bugged by the end of it. I mean, I was so tired. And
so was I.
I couldn't believe it. Like, the day that you'd, the sort of, the days that you were prior. Yeah. And I was sat next to you and I was like, I can't understand how and I'm looking at my Wahoo and I'm like, I can't understand how he's quite happily going this quickly. And I'm not the fittest. I'll hold my hands up. But I was like, this is madness.
Oh, she's back. I'll be honest.
It was a brilliant day. And sun shone. And yeah, it was great. And I think, after we turned off, you went to Lowestoft and it looked lovely. So chapeau. It was your ride. A flipping heck.
It was the hardest thing I've done.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Because when I said to you, how are you, and you're not happy. I don't think you were all that thrilled, to be honest with you.
I was tired. I mean, that was the second to last day. I was really tired.
And I'm not surprised. And I'm really not surprised. I'm not surprised. I mean, flipping heck.
I think it hit me the day that I went through. It properly hit me the day that I went through the Peak District. That was kind of the point where I was like, I'm tired now. I need to go home. Yeah. And towards the end of that day, I was worn out. And so that was I think I had 4 days left after that. And I think part of it was my body just sort of went, okay, we've got 4 days left. It kind of had gone, yeah, we're basically done. And was like, yep, we're tired now. And then, I mean, that's when it properly hit me. But I think a lot of that is because the days that were before that was Edinburgh to Newcastle, which was a glorious day, but it was also 200 kilometres. And then it was through the Pennines, and then it was through the Peak District, basically. So like really, and through the Yorkshire Dales as well. So it's like really lumpy days. So I think all of that combined, I made it hard in the last week. The last week was tough. Every week was tough. The first week was tough because it was the southwest and it's just so sharp and steep down. And then the second block was tough because the weather was horrific in Scotland. And then the last sort of block was tough because it was just so much climbing again. I think the first block was the most climbing and the last block was the second most climbing, but I'd had like 2 weeks in my legs, so I was tired anyway. But yeah, I was trying to like work out as a comparison how it was compared to Australia, because it's similar length of time. It's actually a slightly further distance than Australia, but a similar amount of days of riding basically. But the actual elevation for Australia, I rode that elevation in the first, I think, 4 or 5 days of this challenge. So,
right, wow.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that says a lot about it. And I mean, in Australia, the weather was pretty good most of the time. We had it a bit cold a couple of days. I think we had a bit of rain one day, but it wasn't that bad compared to
that enormous galah.
Yeah.
That's my favourite bit on the videos. The big flaming galah.
Do you know we both have tattoos of one?
Amazing.
Yeah. It was there's actually 3 people that have this tattoo. There's myself, Francis, and our mate Leanna, who is in Melbourne, and she got it because we got it basically.
It's a cool tattoo.
Yeah, so I've got one with a bit of colour on. Francis's one is all like black ink, and Leanna's one is just like the outline of it.
Cool.
So we have slightly different ones, but it's the exact same design.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to talk to you about was, so some people, so I feel that more people should know who you are without actually maybe knowing who you are.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
So it's something that I don't really consider.
Yeah.
And probably, I don't know. It's probably something that I should have maybe dined out on more than I probably have.
Because, I mean, if we go back a couple of years, no one else was doing cycling illustrations. No one.
There was a handful of us, I think. Like, from my point of view, like in cycling illustration that I know, like my first person that I really cottoned onto was Joe Burt, who creates mint sauce. So he was a big inspiration to me. He lives in Brighton, and I've ridden with him a bit, and he's a great guy. And he was the person who sort of, when I was doing my GCSEs in the late 90s, he was the guy who was, it was like MBUK was like, it's the greatest thing ever. Yeah. So, and his artwork is just beautiful. It's stunning. So for me, it was like, he's like the OG. Mm-hmm. And then he was in Rouleur as well before I was. And he did a load of work with Paul Fornell on his book Velo, which is just stunning. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, yeah, I think that Joe Burt is the sort of, he's the god. He's so cool.
He's the granddad.
No, he doesn't look very old. Doesn't look old. He's not old.
Metaphorical granddad.
Yeah, I'd say OG, but okay. Yeah, I don't want to call him a granddad because he'd kill me. But yeah, and yeah, I think cycling and illustration, there's always been people doing it, but I don't know. I think that with social and this, that, and the other, all of a sudden it was, and Rouleur, yeah, it's amazing how many people read that magazine, old versions and new versions of it.
That's because they're just beautiful magazines at the end of the day. Like, I have a large assortment on my shelf next to me, and the covers are always beautiful. It's just really well laid out and constructed. You know, really actually interesting articles, not necessarily like product reviewy things, which I don't really like, to be honest. Like, it is stories, they're genuine stories about things and, you know, countries and rides and people, all that kind of stuff. And that's what I really like about it. I feel that maybe now it's got, I mean, it feels to me now it does have a lot of adverts in it, but they're normally all at the front or at the back. So I just go, let's go around that bit. So it's quite an easy solve.
Yeah.
But I
like
mean,
anything in print, you know, you've got to make, at the end of the day, it started and there were less adverts in it. But then eventually, you know, you've got to keep people in jobs.
Got to pay the bills.
You know, that's it. And that's what happens with a lot of these sort of, I don't know, a lot of things really start out. Yeah. And I think that's just what's happened, what just has to happen with that magazine. But I think at its core, it's still, you know, a beautiful piece of work. And it's now at number 100, which is...
Yeah, I saw that.
So that's coming out. I think that's where we are now. So we're on the 11th of November today when we're recording. Yeah, so issue 100, not episode, issue 100 is coming out, which is amazing. It's great.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, you know, bear in mind it's a monthly edition as well. Like, is it monthly?
But well, it used to be. So it originally started as quarterly.
Yeah.
And then it went bi-monthly.
Bi-monthly, yeah.
And I'm not sure where we are now. I think it might still be bi-monthly. I'm not sure.
I feel like it might be bi-monthly still, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my first like eyes on you was the stuff you did for Team Sky.
Sure. Okay.
And that's the first thing that I really remember was the Team Sky stuff. And do you know what? One of the things that I remember is, so I have a friend who I unfortunately don't talk to that much anymore, just drifted apart. His dad ran a graphic design company down in Kent, and he's a massive cyclist. And I actually bought my first proper road bike from him.
Right.
And is a Focus Zalco Max. It's a great bike, really, really great bike.
Nice bike, yeah.
It's a lovely bike. It's matte black with like matte grey bits on it. It was really nice, lovely bike. And he had a little plastic Eddie Merckx and a little plastic Mark Cavendish sitting. He used to have like loads of like trinkets of things.
I've got them.
You got them?
Yeah, they're on the. Oh, they're right. Oh yeah. Yeah. These have got a bit. They've got a bit dusty, but I'll polish them off.
Just a little wipe on the jumper. There's the cab. There's the Merckx.
There you go.
Yeah. Great faces on them.
Yeah, this is. I love doing these. They were brilliant. They were such fun to do. It was the Eddie was the first one that we did, and we did it. So yeah, collaboration with Rouleau magazine. I started working with Rouleau magazine in 2009, and did bits of illustration for them. The idea was, if I had an idea, I could go to them and say, I've got this idea. Originally, they came to me and said, oh, we'd seen, the very first time that I worked with them, they'd seen a piece of mine online. I had a blog, but it was my website really, but it was updated like a blog. So if I did new bits of work, I could just chuck it up there. I'm not a web design guy. So for me at that time, 2009, if you wanted a singing and a dancing website, you had to get somebody to build it for you. There was no Squarespace, unfortunately, which I now use. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's not a podcast sponsored by Squarespace, I know. Is it?
I know. One of very few. Should be, because I use it as well. It's so easy to use.
So I did this piece of animation. My background is in animation. I went to university to study animation. So piece of animation about Eddie Merckx cycling in a loop at the 1974. It was when he did his hour record in Mexico City. Anyway, that was seen by Rouleau magazine, by the editor and creator of Rouleau magazine at that point, Guy Andrews. Emails me out of the blue. He said, oh, I'd love you to come and do some stuff for the magazine. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. And I didn't really know much about the magazine at that point. And I knew I'd grown up with cycling. Like my dad was and still is a really keen cyclist. So I'd grown up watching the Tour a bit in the summer. My first cycling memory is the 1989 Tour de France. With Greg LeMond, won by 8 seconds by Laurent Fignon. And then, so I went to meet up with Guy, and I sat in a little cafe around the corner from their building, which was where Rafa were originally. Imperial Works, is it that?
Yeah. Imperial Works.
Is that where it? Not where they are now, but it was the original place. It might not be in. Where is it? Where in Kentish Town? Anyway, I can't remember what the place is.
They're now by King's Cross. Yeah.
So we were in Kentish Town. We're in this little cafe. Me and Guy and Camille McMillan, who's a photographer and founder of Further.
Yeah.
So I'm sat across. Really odd day. I was in a. I'd been. 2009 was a weird year for me because the sort of economic crisis had really hit, and I was working on this project with this guy in Brighton, and we were trying to create animated explainer videos for pieces of software, And we'd been to visit a hedge fund that day, and I was wearing a suit because we'd been to see this hedge fund to try and get a contract for them to do something with them. So we all had to wear suits. And I was like, well, I've got to go now. Got to see this magazine. And it's going to be really nice. It'd be nice. But I was in this suit, and they looked at me like, why is this guy wearing this suit for this meeting? It was a green suit, admittedly. It was quite snazzy. But yeah, not the usual thing that you would turn up to a cycling meeting with. I'm sure you can attest to that, Chris.
Yeah.
So we sat in this cafe, and they were like, "Oh, we like your work." And I was like, "Oh, that's nice, thanks." He said, "Do you want to be in the magazine? I've got 12 pages to fill." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he was like, "Do you know much about the magazine?" I was like, "Well, not really." And he said, "Do you know much about the 1974 Giro d'Italia?" And I went, "No." I was like, "No idea." I went, "Well, this is a version of what we want. This is what we want you to do. I've got this on CDR." And he pushes across this really old film, which is called The Greatest Show on Earth. It's one of the best cycling films of all time. I love it now. I love it. I've watched it a lot, and yeah, it's just spectacular. And then, can you do something around this film? And I was like, "Oh, right, okay. Can you tell me of the work that you've seen of mine, what you like?" And he was like, "All of it." And I was like, "Okay."
Narrows it down.
I'm trying to narrow this brief down, and it wasn't happening. It was like, "This is what we want you to do. Crack on."
Yeah.
I'm going to the Tour de France for 3 weeks, and I'll see you when you get back. Or I'll see you when I get back. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So 12 pages. Off I went, and they gave me a stack of Rouleur magazines, of early ones, which is nice. And I devoured them on the train on the way home. It was just like, wow, this magazine is unbelievable. Like, it was just so different. And I think back then it felt even more different because this sort of the sort of renaissance of print hadn't quite kicked off. So it was like, now people say, "Oh, I've created this magazine and it's the Rouleur of." I feel like people still like the Rolls Royce of. Now it's become like it's the Rouleur of tennis or boxing or whatever. And instantly you know what sort of a magazine it'll be, because I don't know, it just set such a high benchmark. And it's interesting it's nice. It's really nice to have been part of that. And then I did that piece of work, went down really well, I guess. They asked me to do some more.
Yeah.
And then, eventually, circling back to what we were talking about before, about Eddie, using the original drawing, the first drawing that I did for Rouleur magazine of Eddie Merckx, we created this vinyl, Eddie vinyl, which was a limited edition. There he is, look.
Oh.
It was a limited edition of 500. And people were quite excited in cycling. They'd never really seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, we'd done the mugs of him and a few others already, and we'd done some T-shirts, and I was like, "Oh, people seem to like this. This is quite cool." And I was working, when this came out in 2012, maybe, 11 or 12. I was working around the corner from Rouleur they'd moved by that point. I mean, I was working in Shoreditch, living in Brighton and commuting to Shoreditch each day. I was working at a games company called Mind Candy. We made a game called Moshi Monsters for small children. It was quite...
I know it.
It's quite an interesting place to work. And there was a lot going on. And then, and so we sort of found a place in China that would make them. And we made 500 because that was the smallest run that they would do. Yeah, it was a very exciting thing to do, and people still talk to me. Will you do any more of those? And I don't think we will, to be honest with you. But they are really cool. And every now and again, an Eddie will pop up on eBay, and the price of them is going up. So if you've got one, my tip is to not use it. Don't let your kids play with it, especially the glasses on the Mark. They come off. They're little Oakleys, so they can go over his eyes as well, which is quite cool. But don't let your kids break the Oakleys, because I think eventually I don't know. I'd like to think that eventually it could be worth something. It might be quite nice to think that it might, you know.
Yeah, they were just really cool little things. Nice.
Yeah, I think that's how I look at them as well. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I never really sort of. It's what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like I don't think I've ever really sat and gone, "Oh wow, that was amazing," and probably I will do eventually. But at that moment in time, I was like, "Wow, that was great. Okay, what can we do next?" Or what's, you know, I don't know. There was never. I never really allowed myself much time to sort of, I don't know, dwell or wallow in what he'd done, because it's not the sort of person that I am. I guess it's just one of those things. Maybe, I don't know.
I think that's quite common in a lot of creative people though, because like I definitely don't stop and go and look at the things that I've done. I'm always thinking about what's the next project, what's the next thing I'm going to be working on. And I was like that when I worked in architecture. I was the same. It's always like, what one's the next project? What's the next client? And it was only when I quit architecture and actually went, literally, I couldn't do anything to do with it for a couple of years. I didn't want any involvement of it. But then it was when I went back to it and actually went to have a look at some of the projects I did, where I was like, actually, that was a good project. Did well on that. Like I worked on one that always stands out to me because I could see it quite regularly. JD Sports, the current concept, that I worked on that concept,
right, wow.
And it's still being rolled out. And so I worked on I think it was 3 flagships. One was in Milton Keynes, one was Oxford Street, and I can't remember. I think the other one was Birmingham, something like that. And they were the 3 original flagships of it. And at the time, it was really, really stressful. It was such a stressful project because they're quite a demanding client, really full on. And then I went back and looked at Oxford Street. I don't know, it's probably when it first opened, and I was like, yeah, actually, that was nice. Came out really, really well. It's a bit different.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is it. I think, yeah, it is. It's just, I don't know. I can't explain it. I can't explain why I've never sort of, I've always been on eventually I left Mind Candy, and it was one of those moments where it was like, right, I was made redundant, little bit of money in my back pocket from that. Let's see if all this work that I've been doing on cycling for the last, in late nights and weekends, let's see if it can sort of bear some fruit, I guess. And that was the opportunity that I had in the middle of 2014. I went and back and worked for myself, because I'd worked for myself before then as well. But then now I had 1 child as well. I've now 2. And they're at school now, which is good, which is why the house is lovely and quiet. But yeah, and so it was like, well, let's just see what happens. Let's just, and yeah, it was interesting. And people started asking me for work, and it was, it carried on. And it was, and you and I talked when we rode last together, and I said to you, eventually, and I come on to it eventually, the reason that I'm now back in gainful full-time employment is it's times changed, I think. I felt in cycling, and it was time to find something, permanent. So that's why we're now in Norwich. So I'm now an art director at an ad agency in Crow East in Norwich. So,
and you get to say director as well now, and actually a legit director. Like it's quite a legit title, isn't it?
A nice title. I've never really been one for titles. It's a very simple title as well, which I quite like. It's not sort of long-winded, and you don't have to explain it. It's just, it's really nice to be the creative person and have everything else taken care of. For me, that has been settling in my brain, to be honest with you. There was a lot of times, and you'll appreciate this now, obviously, you know, you have to wear every hat when you work for yourself. You know, you're the new business person, you're the social media person, you're the client services person, you're the creative as well, and then you're the finance guy chasing up the invoice, you know, and all this stuff. And at times it's a proper buzz, and I love it, and I have loved it. But at times it's it's tasty, shall we say?
Chasing invoices seems to be my favorite pastime right now.
Yeah, for me, it was the thing that was starting to it was getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
And it wasn't small. It wasn't, and the smaller businesses and the smaller brands that you were working with were usually really good. And once you got into the sort of the bigger, when you became a very tiny fish in a very big pond.
Yeah.
That's when things started getting really difficult.
I'm finding that right now. But
yeah, when a company's got, you know, a system that's been in place forever, and they say to you, "Oh, we can't pay you until, you know, 90 days or more," and they spring that on you, and you're like, "Okay."
There's nothing you can do. Yeah. You're literally just like, okay, fine. I'll eat baked beans for a couple of weeks then.
Yeah.
So So another thing I wanted to talk about was, as we've already said, you did a podcast with Ed from Miltag, and it was very much talking about cycling jerseys.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of almost rekindle this about the kit from this year, because I haven't actually talked about it really from many people.
No, that's cool to do that.
And I think you're the right person to talk to about it. And
I'd hope so. I think because we did 11 episodes. Now that sounds really small compared to a lot of episodes of podcasts, even like yourself, you know, 30 odd episodes at the moment. And but it was spread over quite a while, and it was quite nice to be able to sort of, and it's quite nice to I have re-listened to them and see where cycling culture was and is now, and how it's changed, and how kit's changed. And yeah, we used to sit and I would have to edit that podcast, because we would sat and chat for hours.
Yeah.
With tea, sometimes with a beer, and then by the end we'd be a bit pissed because we had a lot of beer and we were rambling on. And it was just a very honest chat about, well, I think this looks nice because of this. But there are kits in this year's peloton that work, and there's been I'll let you carry on, because I know there's a thread here, so I don't want to derail this train.
No, it's perfect. Like, so I think I'm going to start it by thinking of the women's teams. And what I've done right now is I've just got them up on my laptop. And one thing I have liked this year is how teams that have a men's and a women's team have the same kit. Apart from Trek Segafredo. I like that CCC Live is the same kit. FDJ kit is basically the same. Mitchelson Scott kit is the same. Movistar kit's the same. Sunweb kit's the same. I really like that. I think that's really, really cool. Okay, Samsic, their kit's the same. Astana, I think, is the same. I'm not really sure, to be honest, on that one. And that's great. It's good to see. But so much of the women's kit, apart from the Canyon SRAM kit, is shit.
It comes down to, I think it just boils down to budgets as well.
Yeah.
And also, the really important thing that a lot of people, you know, you have to realize with this stuff is, you know, if I'm going to give, you know, Johnny's meatpacking team, you know, X million euro a year, I'm going to want my stuff all over the front of it, all over the back of it. You know, if I've put a huge amount of money into something that's essentially a billboard, because that is what they are.
Yeah.
Then we have to appreciate that somewhere along the line, as a client, somebody will come up to you and say, I think my logo needs to be bigger because I'm the reason that you're here. So
it's paid X amount.
Say again?
Because I've paid X amount to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really, sometimes kits get a hard time. And I think that's really what it boils down to. But that doesn't mean that they can't be really nicely designed. For example, Team Sky kit from 2016, Data Pattern it was called.
Yeah.
Designed by Richard Pierce, who works with David Miller at Chapter 3. It was brilliant. I loved it, and I still love it. And I've seen it a bit this year in the. I'm going to Google. Hang on, I'm going to Google it's really similar. Delco. So I think they had it was somebody else. Anyway, it's similar. I really liked the Delco kit of this year. Just going to put that out. I thought it looked really nice. Another one, hang on. But which cycling kit stood out for you most this year, Chris?
Which cycling kit stood out for me the most? Yes.
Pro cycling kit, we're saying.
I would say I actually quite liked the Bahrain McLaren kit.
Yep.
Because it was very easy to see in the peloton.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of sponsors on it, but it was quite tastefully done.
Okay. I like that. I found out this kit. It's called Rival Securitas.
I think I know the one you mean.
It's like orange. I think they're based in Norway, potentially. Anyway, it's really cool. For me, it was probably my favorite kit of the year. Now, they're not. I think they are either Pro Conti or Continental.
They raced the Tour of Britain last year. They did.
Yeah, and it's orange.
Yeah.
And it's reminiscent of that Data Pattern, and I think that's why I like it.
Yeah.
It's got. It's like a broken line.
Yeah.
In orange with white behind, and then some little notches of blue in there. And I just think it looks really smart.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're going to have a cycling kit, exactly what you say, if it can stand out really well. A few years ago, we went through a phase where everyone was just blue or black. And I think now, hopefully, we're starting to learn that, for teams to get noticed, they have to do they have to really stand out.
Yeah.
And obviously EF Education First I think they're the flag bearer for that, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I mean, the pink kit stands out fantastically. The Palace collaboration kit, what was so good about it was the amount of press it got. That was genius. The amount of press outside of cycling.
It was worth the Swiss francs fine that they got.
Yeah.
I don't think you could pay that small amount of, and yes, obviously you have to create the kit, you have to work with these people, everything costs money. I appreciate that. But from a PR perspective, I think it was priceless. It was brilliant.
It was brilliant. It got so much for that team. And then they won some stages at the Giro with it.
Yeah.
I will say, actually in the peloton, it didn't stand out that much.
Yeah.
Definitely not as much as the pink.
No, I think you're right.
But I thought the TT helmets were fun as well, with the little duck heads. I thought that was really fun.
I think the more that we can see that, the better. And I would rather we can change some rules in the UCI and just get a bit of, I don't know, a bit of interest back.
One of the things that I thought that was really clever about it was bringing in brands outside of cycling.
Yeah.
And Rafa, to me, as a brand now, has outgrown cycling. What I mean by that is that I know people who do not like cycling and are not cyclists, but know Rafa and would buy Rafa like t-shirts and trousers and stuff like that, because they're not cyclists. They just like being in like part of the brand and the story of the brand. So doing a collaboration with Palace is kind of, you look at some of their early stuff, they look like Paul Smith collaborations, and like with Cask Helmets, like that was quite a nice tie-up as well. But what Rafa have done by doing these kind of collaborations with Palace, which is a skateboard company effectively, is they've kind of gone, let's take something completely outside of cycling and intertwine it, and it actually points a whole different audience at it. I was talking to someone about the like Palace collaboration, and apparently it was all from Palace's side. It was not much from Rafa. Palace were pushing to do it, and to hear that, that's exciting, because it shows that there's the potential that other brands are looking at ways to get into cycling. You know, I would never have put Palace as a brand to put with a cycling team ever.
No, it was like nothing. That moment was, I haven't seen that moment in the sport for a really long time. And sport needs moments like that. Whether you like the kit, whether you don't like the kit, a team, you know, essentially a sponsor lives and dies on how many people are talking about it. Yeah. And if that means that, you know, they do something a bit out there, but everybody talked about it.
Yeah.
Like, Twitter was just awash, and your Insta stories was just like, have you seen this? Wow, or I don't like it. This is horrible. For me, it was a really funny one. And it took me a couple of days to get my head around it. And I look back and I really like it now. But at the time I was like, I don't know about this, because I don't know about whether it was sort of, I don't know. It was a funny one in my brain. I couldn't. It was a. Yeah.
I'm with you. It didn't sit at first when I saw it. It didn't quite. I wasn't sure on it. It didn't quite sit with me. I thought it was a bit. It just seemed a bit not quite.
I want to say it felt a bit try hard.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was a bit like cringe. It was a bit cringe. Yeah. And I don't. But I can look. But it worked.
Yeah.
And so because it worked, it was instantly like, because it worked instantly, I take off my hat, because I don't think it could have, it didn't miss the mark, but I don't know what the mark was.
Yeah.
And I quite like that about it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what the sort of, and I loved how people were getting really annoyed about how the hype beast reselling was happening on eBay.
Yeah.
That just amused me. It was like, this jersey's now 600 quid. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's how it has always happened. Like Supreme drops, big queue out the door.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to bring a camera in, this, that, and the other. I remember getting told off once. I went into that shop. It wasn't like a big day. I just wandered in. I was having a mooch around Soho, and I walked. There was like the geezer, all right. I was like, oh yeah, all right, yeah, I like your shop. And he was, I knew nothing about Supreme. It was a few years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, this is nice. I was like, oh, that's cool. Take my phone out. You're not allowed to have your phone in here, camera in that. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, no. I'll have to ask you to leave if you start taking photographs. He was a big fella, and I was
you
like,
wouldn't mess with him.
No, I was like, oh, okay. Phone goes away. I'm like, weird shop. Come walk out again, and I'm like, and then eventually, you Google where you'd been, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
oh, hey, I get it now. That's fine, whatever. But like for me, it was a moment, and I think that sport and cycling need people like that and moments like that just to shake it up. And you see it with people like Alec Briggs with what he's doing with Techers and that sort of thing, and it's great, and it is exactly what you just need to people need to reevaluate what the norm of this sport is, and if they think that something is the norm, then maybe we need to start switching that up and maybe doing things a little bit differently. So
Yeah, what Alec is doing is incredibly refreshing, really refreshing. Especially in, the kind of, I guess, the tier that he races in. It's pretty domestic racing. They've done they've been invited to the Tour Series, that kind of stuff, where that kind of level of racing in the UK is very good, but teams are just folding by the wayside.
Yeah.
Like, you think over the last, couple of years, we've lost JLT Condor, we've lost Madison Genesis, and that's two of the biggest domestic British teams.
Huge.
Yeah.
And long. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how this year has affected it, the UK scene, and I hope it's okay. I do.
Really do. It's definitely been a concern of mine, but I think that there's more projects like what Alec is doing with Techers that come out. I mean, that's got to be a good thing, and I do feel that when there's like adversity, and sort of negative points, that there's always good that comes off it. And Alec is definitely one of the good things that's coming off that. And the kit that he designed is beautiful. It's stunning, really, really lovely. And the ethos of the team, and then getting like Felix English and Eleanor Barker to race for it, that's fucking cool. That's really cool.
It is really cool. I think for me, he stands out as the sort of person that says, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And then it will happen. And I have tried to do things like that in the past and know how hard it is. And so I understand how hard he will work to do that. This isn't the sort of thing that, he just sort of, I can't imagine, he's not the sort of person to just bumble along and things will just fall into his lap. That's unlikely. He will really graft. And, I think, and just thinking differently about the sort of the norm of the sport and how we can just, turn it up a few extra notches, or look at things ever so slightly differently, or look at things completely differently. And yeah, it's what sport needs, people like him, to be honest with you. They do. And if the EF thing, as we go into the 2021 season, we're sat in November now, and the season that starts probably again in, hopefully, with COVID, hopefully it'll start again in hopefully it'll teams will come back in good health. That's what, both, financially and physically.
It's going to be interesting because of, I think Tour Down Under's been cancelled.
Yeah.
And the Cadell Ocean race has been cancelled as well.
Right.
And that's like two very early in the year races, massive races for the Australian riders, definitely. I think the fact that we got 3 Grand Tours is insane. I didn't think we'd get one.
No. And just how brilliant they were.
So good.
I mean, every single race, like every day, certainly every day of the Tour and the Giro and probably the Vuelta as well, but it just felt like every day was being raced like it was the last. There was just such a ridiculous amount of real racing and energy and attacking, and it was like, yeah, it was amazing. I've watched races previously where you think the person that wants to win this the most will win, basically. So, if you're going to give 100% to that attack and you don't look back and you just go, if you're a Peter Sagan or someone like that, Paris-Roubaix, or I don't know, you've got to be the one. You've got to give it absolute beams, and it felt like people were doing that every stage. It was, and as fans, as cycling fans, it was just, it was magic. It was so good.
It was so lovely to see Alex win a stage at the Giro as well. That was very emotional.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it was as somebody who, I don't know the chap, but even for me to sit there, it was just like, it was fabulous. I mean,
you could tell how much it meant, couldn't you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. quite excited. I don't know because he's confirmed he's got a contract, but he hasn't confirmed where. And I've been pushing him to try and find out where, and he won't say. And I think the reason why he won't say is because I don't know if you saw yesterday, he announced that he's going to have another crack at the hour record.
Yeah.
So, which is mega as well.
In Manchester, is that right? In Manchester?
I think it's the 12th of December.
Right, wow. Not far away then.
Yeah. A month away, basically. So I knew that we'd talked about that in the past, so I kind of knew that was on his radar. And that, I mean, he wouldn't suggest doing it if he didn't think he could break it.
I think he's definitely got. Oh, he had it previously
for 38, something like that.
Yeah, so he knows what he has to do. But yeah, I'll keep my fingers crossed. I really will. I hope he does it. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
What an end to the year that would be. Flipping it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you think that he's got a new contract. Don't know whether it's Israel or if it's at another team. And then obviously he's got a little one due in January. So it's all very, very exciting for Chanel and Alex.
Big year.
Yeah, I've been pestering him to do a podcast with him at some point, but I've kind of loosely left him sort of stood back a bit because I was going to try and do one after the Giro, and then I got busy, and we're going to try and do one at some point anyway because I'd like maybe after the hour record, if it's successful, could be a good time. Maybe
either way, it'd be interesting to talk to him about it.
He'll be fucking miserable if he doesn't do it. I spoke to him after the European Champs TT, and I think he came 5th, which is a great result, but he wanted to podium and he was not a happy bunny. Understandably. So I kind of left it a couple of days and I was like, well done, mate, good result. And he was just like, yeah, it wasn't what I wanted. And which is understandable. He's a competitive man, wants to do as well as he can. And you've got some crazy strong time trialists now at the moment.
Yeah.
You can't look past Pippo Ganna at the moment. Like, he is a rocket.
It was amazing to watch him at the Giro. He was just unbelievable.
And then going and winning a stage, basically up a hill. It was just like, fair enough. That's Italy's next big hope there. So
a lot of people saying that he was like the new Moser, Francesco Moser. Yeah, a lot of people have heard them say that. Yeah, can see it happening.
He's the build and the size. Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do with the podcast towards the end, I haven't pre-warned you on this, but you might know because I think you've listened to a couple, is I always like to ask people for their 5 life hacks, tips, anything like that. And it can be literally anything.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. My life hacks are, well, my biggest one is to get outside. It sounds really random and probably a bit boring, but just, I don't know, fresh air is good for your brain, man. It's the one thing. I drink, that would be the first one. Now on the spot, you got me on the spot. I haven't prepared these. I don't know if you can tell.
That's always intentional because I think the best ones come off the cuff.
I think that's fair. Tea is my drink. A lot of people know that, but mainly because I don't think you can. You can't get it really wrong like you can coffee.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a life hack, but I do enjoy a nice china mug for my tea. There you go. That is a life hack. There you go.
Yeah, make it a china mug. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a better tea, I think. This is one of the things we've been. Yeah. Life hack number 3. I always pretty much ride with lights on.
That's, I think, is a completely valid thing right now.
Always, and I've done it for the last few years, maybe the last 3 years. I've always gone out with lights on, and not tiny lights, proper lights.
Yeah.
And the amount of, you know, friends of mine have asked me to turn my rear light off migraine mode recently, and we've been riding together. Because if I'm in a bunch and it's still on, then maybe I can put it on a, you know, a less offensive mode. But yeah, lights. Yeah, that it was something I got. A Bontrager flare, which is the rear one.
Yeah, it's nuts. That light is so bright.
It's so, but it's just, it just sits there and you don't notice it's there, and it just starts doing a job.
Yeah,
and I just turn it on, and it's like, and it's super bright, but it's very small, and yeah, it's probably the biggest. Yeah, I really love that light, and now I've got a bigger front light that I used to just ride at night with, but now that just stays on and is on blinking all the time.
yeah.
So, yeah, lights is a definite one. Eat more when you're riding your bike.
You're right. Most people don't eat enough.
No, I've ridden for as I say, I've ridden for quite a few years, and it's really, actually, it's probably my revelation of the year. Like, and because I was quite sort of prone to the bonk, really, sometimes really bad. And I just sort of maybe thought that I would get over it, but then it would happen again, and I would be groveling home at less than 10 miles an hour, and the world was sort of closing in around me, you know, on a club run or something, or a training ride with some of the lads that I used to ride with back in Sussex quite a few years ago in the club that I was in, and yeah, I could always feel it coming, and you'd think, oh, bollocks. And by that point, you'd think, I can't do anything now. But there's nothing in my pockets. You know, I'm just gonna weather the storm as best possible and try and get home. And then you get home, and you just, you know, you're like, "Are you all right?" And you just, you know, my wife would ask me, "Are you okay?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, I just need to eat quite a lot now." it just wipe you out for the rest of the day. So, yeah, eating more and earlier.
Yeah. If you got to that point where you're feeling hungry, it's too late.
Too late, yeah. That's it. But yeah, I think that's not a bad one. How many is that? 4?
That's 4.
Carry a pencil case with you.
I do. I have a pencil case.
It's too short to not have a, like, it's funny. There should be a moment in your day when you feel like you can have a bit of a noodle around and a doodle. And I've been using these Faber-Castell Pitt pens, brush pens, really nice. I've been using them recently. This is my pencil case that I still have from when I was about 8.
Love it.
And it has some ways we can help our environment drawings on it.
That's great.
I still have it, and it's still, yeah. And I still think that, and it was interesting. I was listening to the Joe Wicks podcast with Mark Cavendish, and he said that he likes drawing, and I was thrilled to bits. He likes to draw things, manga and anime, and then other things. And it's like, and there is something about getting into that flow state, whatever you're doing. And I know he likes to do Lego as well. And I sit and do Lego with my daughters, and I draw and with them, and I draw my own. And there is something about that flow state, certainly at the moment in this lockdown 2.0, whatever you want to call it, that you can just take yourself away mentally. It's really odd. There's a piece at the front of that book of mine, and it says just to make a mark, a single mark in the book. I used to get really funny about sketchbooks. I've probably got all sorts around this house, but a blank sketchbook is ominous. It's really
a blank sketchbook I find really intimidating.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah,
it's really strange, and that and I would always try and start not on the first page. It's really interesting. That's how I've always done it. It's like the first page. It's like this sets the stall out. So if I start on the first page and I turn to the first page every time, and I go, ooh, a little bit shit. Ooh, don't like this sketchbook anymore. So now I'm just like a random page, and yeah, take it from there really, and just keep going. And a lot of people that say to me, I can't draw. And even I don't think I can draw at all. Like I know people that can really draw, and I've worked with them in the past. And you think, bloody hell, like how has he got or she got this? How can you do this? Like how can you create this in front? I'm looking at in front of me, like for example, and you think, well, they just do it all the time. Lunchtime, there they are. You know, after work's finished. Oh, you couldn't come to. Oh, I'm just going to do this, and they're just constantly noodling, and it's like anything, like a runner or a cyclist. You know, they're training their brain or their body like a couple of times a day, every day. And I've always felt like creativity and drawing and this and the other is it's just a habit. If you get into the habit and if you enjoy it, and a lot of people find they enjoy it as well. Oh, yeah. I've done it when I was at school. Yeah, I find that like. Or people have always said, "Oh, I'm not very good, so I don't do it." And you think, well, and my opinion is that everyone can do it and should, because it is really good for your well-being. And also, it's just if you start a sketchbook and you think, "Oh, that drawing wasn't very good," by the time you've got through it and done another one and another sketchbook, you think where you end up. And all that stuff that you've got out of your brain, like people always talk about journaling your thoughts, and I often get them out just by quickly, drawing stuff instead, and just feel so much more at peace. It's quite nice. So, and I think that everyone has got a creative bone in their body.
Yeah, definitely.
They should all give it a flex every so often. So
I always. Wherever I go, I always carry a little sketchbook. Normally, like the mini Moleskine ones, like one of the mini Moleskine.
Like field notes or something.
Yeah, I always have one of them, and I actually like drawing in biros. Yeah, I don't know why. I just really like how biros feel.
But you can. I like a biro because you can change like the line. You can add to it, and you can build up layers, and it just keeps on improving, I guess.
Yeah, and with all my sketchbooks, this is my current one, the first page, I always write in it.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good idea.
And it could be anything. It could literally be anything. And I'm also, whenever I do anything, it just ends up being just doodles, literally just doodles of stuff, which is kind of fun. But I'm also, when I do write stuff, I make it very visual very quickly, because I'm dyslexic, so I need to. I try to find a good example. I put things in boxes that are important.
Oh yeah, okay.
See?
Oh yeah, I do that to remind. Yeah, to go back to it, to highlight things. And
always boxing things. Or sometimes I get a double box. There's a double box in that one.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was obviously really important. I don't know what it was, but so like, but I have a box of sketchbooks and notebooks, which is about, it's the size of like, I don't even know, like if you were to go to Argos or something and buy one of those like house moving boxes, which I don't know, like 50 by 50, something like that, is literally full of notebooks and sketchbooks from, I've probably been doing it on and off, I reckon, before uni, secondary school. I've got them all still. I keep them all, and it's quite nice to like look back through them. Some of them are like, some of them I've just gone, okay, this whole book I'm only going to use charcoal to draw with, or this whole book I'm only going to use a green pen, stuff like that. It could be so random, but it's just nice to be able to go back and look through them. This particular one that I'm using at the moment is very word heavy, because this is normally the one where I write my thinkings down for projects.
Yeah, okay.
And I have another one which is more doodle heavy, so I try and keep them separately. The doodle heavy one is in my rucksack. because that's the one that I take everywhere.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
no, that's it. I mean, yeah, it's you can make a mark with anything. I don't think you need anything flash. You don't need to spend a lot of money. Make your mark and see how you get on.
Yeah, nice, awesome.
All right,
it is always a pleasure to talk to you.
thanks, man.
And
Really enjoyed doing this. It's been nice to be back in the podcast land.
yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm gonna stop this recording right about now.